Good morning. Today is Wednesday, October 17th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Social pressure. One of the ways that the Democrats, the left in this country, brings about change is social pressure. They recognize they don't necessarily have to have, and I suppose this would be on the part of the evolutionary socialists. They don't have to have a revolution. They don't have to have laws put into place. If they can get everybody to act the way they want to, which is the whole point, then it doesn't matter whether they get a law passed or they have people act the way they want to because of social pressure, the threat of becoming isolated and having no friends. So it is important for conservatives. That's why it's important for conservatives not only to talk the talk, but to walk the talk. In other words, to act like a conservative, to resist leftward social pressures. A couple of examples. One is, of course, the old, which I still get. I deliver food and I go into restaurants and I still get, "Hey, boss." Now, if I'm, and I get that even occasionally as a customer, I'll go to a restaurant and somebody says, "Hey, one of the employees call me boss." "Hey, boss." My name's not Boss. Boss is the name that is the nickname that prisoners give to prison guards. So they call the prison guards boss. "Hey, boss." Now, there's the British also do that for bosses, though. Okay, if you're the supervisor, they'll call you boss. "Hey, boss," or governor. "Governor." "Hey, governor." But anyways, it's rude. I don't walk into a restaurant. I'm here to do business. I'm here to purchase your products. Don't call me boss. You call me sir or mister. That's polite. Boss is rude. So two things to do with this as an individual is, number one, don't spread the disease. When you come across left-wing little left-wing things like this where they're cultural pressures, don't spread the disease. If nothing else, if you can't overtly stand up to this, you don't have the temerity to stand up to people like this and say, "Hey, please don't call me boss." Okay, then don't spread the disease. Don't run around calling other people boss. Okay, make sure that it stops with you. And again, then you help to stop the spread of socialism and socialist attitudes. It's typical of the left is informality and lack of respect for other people, particularly for strangers. So that's where this boss comes from. The whole idea is that we're all going to pretend that we're friends. The next step after we pretend that we're friends is you get into my business. You start probing and finding out who I am and what I do and where I live. And then after that, you start bossing me around, telling me what I should or shouldn't do, etc. But it all starts with something as simple as boss. I also want to emphasize and re-emphasize that on the right, we need to understand, each individual that considers himself a conservative, that it is not necessary, as a matter of fact, it's probably counterproductive to try to fight socialism wholesale. Do not go to your to the government, your government people, your senators and representatives and whatnot, and demand that they're going to be passing laws and whatnot to fight socialism. The real fight against socialism is going to happen, is happening at the retail level. That means on the individual level, the one-on-one level. It is the fights, the arguments, the battles that you have with your friends, with your relatives, with your coworkers that are going to make the difference, that are going to make the difference in terms of whether or not socialism succeeds, whether socialism takes hold in this country or it does not. Okay, so that's where it's incumbent upon each individual, each conservative, you, me, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, to be conservative at all times, in all ways. It is up to us to operate with maximum integrity, to have maximum credibility, and we will therefore have maximum amounts of influence. So, and again, another example on the social pressure situation is I worked as in a police department as worked the counter. I was a temp, and it was a clerk's position basically. So I came in and I noticed that the way they did, most of the people that went in there and did customer service at the counter, particularly one particular lady that did it, it was very perfunctory. It was very desultory. She didn't seem to give a hoot. She acted as though, barely recognized the person that she was talking to and whatnot. And I didn't like that. I thought that's kind of, counterproductive and whatnot. Because when you're in a police station and you are working the counter at a police station, your clerk, you're getting some crap. Oh boy. Because everybody that comes in is pissed off. Okay, they're pissed off because their relative's in jail. They're pissed off because their car just got booted or clamped, or they've gotten some sort of bad news. Okay, so you get to bear the brunt of it. You get to come in when they're coming to pay off, when they have to pay $80 to get a boot taken off their vehicle. You're the one that has to deal with their anger. Well, I found a way to deal with it. I found a way to do excellent customer service, and they would come in and they would say, well, this sucks. This is absolute crap. Stuff like that, baiting me in part into an argument. They want me to resist, to say, well, no, it isn't. It's your own damn fault, so then they can go off on me, that kind of thing. And I knew that. And I thought, well, no, I'm not going to do it that way. We're going to do something a little bit different here. And so they'd say, that's crap. And I'd say, you know what? You're damn right it is. And they were stunned. Boom. You should have seen the look on their face when I tell them that. You're damn right it is. Then I tell them, as a matter of fact, it's happened to me. The other day I got ticketed. I got booted. I got whatever. As a matter of fact, I think I've even had my car impounded once, but not by the police. But anyhow, the point is, I sympathized with them. It took all the wind out of their sails. They were stunned. They sat there with their mouth open, jaws on the floor. They couldn't believe it. And I went on to tell them, how much it did suck, how that I've been in their position. I know what it's like. Boy, was I pissed off. So, hey, lady, you have every reason to be pissed off. Okay? So then they walked away. And a lot of them gave me compliments on the way out. They come in, they were pissed off. On the way out, I'd made a friend. So, and this was obviously superior to what the other clerk was doing. And within a short period of time, few days, maybe a week, the clerk knew that, could see the difference. Not only could the clerk see it, everybody else in the police department could see it. The union stewards could see it. They gave me a bonus. I was a temp, and they gave me a $300 bonus. Et cetera, and told me, and I said, I was stunned when I got a bonus. He said, oh, no, you make us look good. Because I didn't realize, it was that big a deal. For me, it was like self-defense. I just did it because I don't want to have to spend 8 hours a day taking shit off of people. That's the real reason I did it. Not to be Mr. Superstar or anything. No. Just kind of self-defense. I don't want to take a lot of crap from people 8 hours a day. So, anyway, it turned out to be bigger than that. So then this lady, who happens to be a union member, quit talking to me. After a week, she quit talking. She wouldn't even acknowledge my existence. I'd walk in the door, she wouldn't even look at me. For a while, I'd still say, hi, good morning. I get nothing. Zip. Wouldn't even say good morning to me. And then after about a week or so of getting that, I said, screw it. I gave up and I didn't even bother to talk to her. And we never did talk. Never after that. Why? Because she's putting me under social pressure to change my ways. Even though my way is superior to her way, that's not the dynamic in this relationship, particularly from a union standpoint. See, now, she would have had me if I had been in the union. The fact that I was non-union, there's nothing she could do. But once I become union, she could file a grievance or something with the union. She could put pressure on me that way and get the union shop steward to get me to stop being so good. Okay? And doing that, why? Because it makes her look bad. Okay? That's why she wants me to change. So she puts an incredible amount of social pressure on me, not talking to me. Now, fortunately, this is a small place, and she couldn't get any of the other union members to follow suit. Okay, but the point is, it's an example of trying to shape my behavior with social pressure. I was able successfully to resist it, and for the 6 months that I was there, and that's the battle each one of us conservatives have, one by one, dealing with the socialists in our lives and dealing with those social pressures, being alert for them and countering them. So when I come back, we're going to take a little break here, and then when I come back, Trump's opponents melt down every day from the Rush Limbaugh show. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back. And I'm going to play a little clip here of Rush Limbaugh talking about Trump's opponents, and I'll make some comments afterwards.
How long has the media been telling us that it's only a question of time that something happens that'll make Donald Trump self-destruct? They've been telling us this since prior to the presidential election. They've been telling us since the campaign, since Trump came down the escalator 3 years ago, June of 2015. The media has been telling us, and noted experts in the Washington establishment have been telling us that it's Trump's going to self-destruct. Something's going to happen and Trump's going to blow up and everybody's going to see who the real Trump is, and everybody's going to be shocked and surprised and saddened, and then everybody's going to want Trump swept away. But it never happens. It never happens. Instead, we keep watching his critics self-destruct. Trump's opponents melt down now practically every day over the fact that Trump isn't melting down. Again, reminder, New York Times, Elizabeth...
There we go. Okay, always having a tough time getting that one stopped. But, so, that's the point I'm trying to make with the left. That a lot of times people get it wrong. Rush Limbaugh and et al. get it wrong. Here he happened to get it right on the button. But they get it wrong in that they suggest that, for instance, that the pressure on Trump is dealing with an impeachment. And that's not what they're after at all. Because if they go out and they impeach Trump, they know that they piss off a large segment of the body politic in the United States of America. Okay, they've got blood on their hands. You take down a popular president. Ooh, remember what happened with Bill Clinton? He was impeached. they had the trial, and the Senate went ahead and just basically dumped the whole thing. They probably could have convicted him, but the Senate, the Republican senators were had clay feet or whatever. But anyways, the point is their excuse was Bill Clinton was a popular president. And the political theory is you do not impeach a popular president, no matter what he's done. So the same thing kind of thing applies here. If they go out and they impeach the president, they'll have blood on their hands. And not only is it going to put them in a bad position politically, but socially. Who wants to go to a cocktail party when you got blood on your hands? Who wants to talk to an executioner? Who wants to rub elbows with the executioner? Nobody. Okay, the executioner's got a legitimate job to do, but that doesn't mean you want to invite him to dinner. Okay, so it kind of puts people off. So one of the best ways you can do things is put pressure on your opponent sufficient to get them to destroy themselves. That's the ultimate. In this particular case, the threat of impeachment is to get Donald Trump to go ahead and be under such pressure that he resigns. That he says, you know what, I just can't take it anymore, or commit gaffes on the way out. I mean, really serious mistakes that cause him to resign. Okay, then they can say, hey, we were right, America. You were wrong. You voted for a guy that ultimately confessed to being a bad president, to being a bad man, and he confessed in the form of a resignation. So the same thing that is what they're trying to do here, that Rush Limbaugh is referring to, that his opponents want to get him, put him under such pressure that he melts down. And he doesn't. He does make some... he has his own kind of way of, I guess, of getting even. For instance, one of his opponents, of course, was Stormy Daniels. And Stormy Daniels then made some comments about his sexual prowess, and Donald Trump yesterday got even with her by referring to her as horseface. And I love it. I'm glad he did. Also, the other thing is I want to make sure that I emphasize here is that Donald Trump is a social force, a political social force. Before Donald Trump, there was a certain way that politicians were expected to act within Washington. The Washington crowd had prescribed that this is the kind of behavior we're looking for from an insider, whether you're a senator or president or whatever. Donald Trump comes along, breaks most, if not all, of the rules. For instance, George W. Bush, if he was facing a situation with Stormy Daniels, would never have referred to her as a horseface. He would never have tweeted. He wouldn't have tweeted anything. Okay, and as a matter of fact, he did take a lot of shots. People would say all kinds of nasty things about him. He would never ever respond, and it drove a lot of his supporters crazy. And his father, George W.'s father, was the same way. Reagan was the same way to a large degree or extent. Here comes Trump, and Trump is now putting pressure on that social expectation of the way presidents are to handle themselves. Okay, so it's going to be interesting to find out when Trump leaves office, whether it's in another 2 years or 6 years, what the result is going to be. Will Donald Trump have changed the temperament paradigm in Washington? Are we going to see more politicians acting like Trump, or is Trump going to be the last of his kind? Is he a dinosaur? Is his style going to be extinct in Washington? That's what's going to be interesting to see. So I'm thinking, it seems to me that it's looking more and more like things are going to go Trump's way, and you're going to see more and more politicians that become Trump-like. And what'll be interesting is seeing new politicians, new people running for office, and how they approach the office that they're, are they going to follow the Trump model, or are they going to follow the George W. Bush model? So, because you can't have both. One way or the other, something's got to dominate. Something has to dominate. So that's the interesting dynamic that's going on right now. And look at what Lindsey Graham's doing. Lindsey Graham is coming out and being much more vocal, being more Trump-like. He's not quite, full-fledged Trump yet, but he's moving that direction. Look at some of the bold statements that he's made. Also, Grassley, who is the chairman of the committee that was in charge of the confirmation of Justice Kavanaugh. He made some bold statements. Even the normally wishy-washy, tepid leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, was coming out and making some rather bold statements. So as of now, it looks as though the paradigm is starting to shift Trump's direction. And that's one of the things they say about somebody, the difference between just a regular person and a true superstar in any field is, can you fundamentally change the position or the game that you play, so to speak? If you're a football star, did you fundamentally change the game in certain ways? If you're a receiver, for instance, did you change the way that receivers now approach the game in terms of being a receiver or a quarterback? The first quarterback that started doing a lot of running was somebody that was trying to change the position. He's not just good at completing passes, but is trying to fundamentally change the position. And Donald Trump is on the verge of being not just a president, completing his presidency, but on the verge of being a truly great president, because he is on the verge of transforming not only the presidency, but politics, presidential, federal politics as well, and the approach and outlook that people have towards it. Be back in a minute. Thank you very much. And so let's see, we're going to go back to the Ayn Rand lexicon, because we got another juicy concept here to deal with. It's called common sense. And I like this one because, let me go through this and then I'll comment. Common sense is a simple and non-self-conscious use of logic. That which today is called common sense is the remnant of an Aristotelian influence. Americans are the most reality-oriented people on earth. Their outstanding characteristic is the childhood form of reasoning, common sense. It is their only protection, but common sense is not enough where theoretical knowledge is required. It can make simple, concrete-bound connections. It cannot integrate complex issues or deal with wide abstractions or forecast the future. So, common sense has largely gone by the wayside in our country, in our society, because common sense has been denied by the left. Common sense is part of knowledge, and the part of the left is skepticism, the contradiction that nothing can be known with certainty. So, and usually we would start, if you can see some of this, the left here in court, and skepticism in court, where you end up, first of all, with a lot more hung juries. Why? Because you're going to find that they're going to be, if you're not careful and you don't weed them out, all you have to have is one skeptic on the jury, one person who believes that nothing can be known with certainty. He's going to question everything endlessly. He's never going to accept any of the evidence. Presto, hung jury. Okay, so and again, that's the effect of having skepticism, or one of the effects of having skepticism in the courtroom. The other one is, or skepticism in our society, it creeps into our judicial system. The other place where you can see this happening, the skepticism angle, is Bill Clinton, when he was being investigated and prosecuted for, they were looking to disbar him because I think they got him for perjury was what they ended up convicting him of, and getting him disbarred, I think, in the state of Arkansas. So and they did a deposition, and they're asking him something, and his answer was, well, that depends on what the meaning of the word is. And it's stunning. Now, to people that have grown up lately, it probably isn't. There's a lot of people out there that probably think, hey, that's a good question. No, it isn't, because it's a matter of common sense. What Bill Clinton has done is deny common sense. He pretends that he does not possess common sense, which is obviously ridiculous. We know that he does, and we don't have to look inside his brain to know that. We just look at how he acts. Okay. Ayn Rand was right when she was saying that there's a lot of people out there that try to prove that reality doesn't exist, but they use reality to try to make their point. That they use knowledge to pretend that there is no knowledge. Use ethical judgments and statements to negate ethics. Okay, so because those items are real, period. Ethics is real, knowledge is real, and of course, objectivity is real. So, so common sense, that's why I like this particular entry, is, again, to remind people of the value of common sense. So it is things that we all know and understand and take for granted, but the left wants to pretend. They want to have the idea, the Cartesian idea of throwing everything that we know in the trash and starting all over. And you and I have to say no. Somebody asks you, what do we do about this? The first question is to ask, well, what are we doing now? Because very often that's what the questioner is doing, is that they are simply ignoring the solutions to the problem, whatever problem that they're worried about that is currently applicable. What are we doing now about the situation? What are we doing now about this particular problem? And we start from there and look at that. Is that sufficient? Is it still a valid solution? Be back in a minute. Thank you very much. So the 10 books that screwed up the world. Let's see where we're at here. So we're looking at Descartes and his, it's called Discourse on Reason, I believe. And when we left it, he was talking about, he was starting to explain what Descartes was all about. So, and we got a little bit more of that. The more we look at the great thinkers, so Descartes tells us, the more confusion we find. The more we examine the traditions of our own country as compared to those of other countries, the more everything seems to be relative. All is shifting sand. But even more must be doubted. Our senses sometimes err. We see things that aren't really there. We hear noises and misidentify what they are. What to do? Descartes decided to suppose that nothing was exactly as our senses would have us imagine. If that weren't enough, we must doubt even reason. As we find ourselves making errors in reasoning, even in mathematics, Descartes decided to reject as false all the reasonings that I had previously taken for demonstrations, unquote. Finally, as we think we are awake when we are dreaming and experience things as real in dreams, quote, I resolved to pretend that everything that had ever entered my mind was no more true than the illusions of my dreams, unquote. And what was left after this scorched earth approach? According to Descartes, quote, during the time I wanted thus to think that everything was false, it was necessary that I, who thought thus, be something. And noticing that this truth, I think, therefore I am, was so firm and so certain that the most extravagant suppositions of the skeptics were unable to shake it, I judge that I could accept it without scruple as the first principle of the philosophy I was seeking, unquote. There we have it, one of the most famous phrases in the history of philosophy. I think, therefore I am. Or, in its most famous form, cogito ergo sum. The discourse, of course, was originally written in French, and so we have je pense, donc je suis, where the I, French je, has the same egoistical emphasis as the English version. Sounds convincing, doesn't it? If it does, congratulations. You've just walked into a trap that has ensnared the Western mind for 4 centuries. It is a trap from which there is no escape because Descartes has presented it as itself an escape. But it is an escape from a trap that does not exist. Skepticism is a problem in our minds. It is a deadly trap only if we retreat into our minds to escape it. That is, if we let our doubt turn into doubt about reality. The place to run to escape skepticism is not our own minds, where the spider of solipsism waits to devour us, but straight into a tree, to remind ourselves that, whatever our fancy to the contrary, the real world outside our minds has been factually solid all along. The proper and natural treatment for those inclined to think themselves into a corner is not to go into a corner and think, but to run out into the fields, to grasp and be grasped by reality. But we must dig deeper into the Descartes fundamental error. On a lesser level, it is simply ridiculous to single out thinking as the act by which I know I am existing. One could just as easily use hearing, smelling, or coughing, except perhaps that they don't sound nearly as good in Latin. Audio ergo sum, odoror ergo sum, tussio ergo sum. I'm not denying that thinking is more fundamentally human than hearing, smelling, or coughing, but only calling attention to the point that Descartes' argument is not somehow essentially tied to thinking. It is only this, that while I am doing X, whatever X is, I cannot doubt my existence because I have to exist to do X. On a deeper level, the snappy dictum, I think, therefore I am, contains one of the most pernicious confusions possible, so destructive that we might very well call it the first sin. We catch the error if we lapse for a moment into common sense and say, well, Renee, isn't it really the other way around? In order to think, I first have to exist. And I go right on existing even when I am not thinking. And anyway, didn't the world get along just fine before I was ever around to think about anything? So we should say, I am, therefore I can think, rather than I think, therefore I am. The common sense point is this. Reality exists before our thinking, so that our thinking depends on reality. And this in 2 ways. First, our thinking depends on the reality of our own existence. If we don't exist, we can't think. Second, our thinking correctly depends on our properly conforming our minds to what really exists. Scientific theories are judged true or false, better or worse, insofar as they actually correspond to the way things are in the real world. Against Descartes, we assert common sense against nonsense. The first principle of philosophy is reality, or being, not I think. Reality trumps. If we ignore this first principle and take Descartes instead, our imaginations untethered to reality can only run wild, as he himself giddily demonstrates. Quote, I could pretend that I had no body, and that there was no world nor any place where I was, but I could not pretend that I did not exist, unquote. And what does he conclude? Quote, from this I knew I was a substance, the whole essence or nature of which was merely to think, and which, in order to exist, needed no place and depended on no material thing, unquote. Obviously, this absurdity was not uttered near lunchtime. In any case, reality had the last to say over Descartes' imagination. He died of a cold. I know how hard it is to think when I have a cold. Perhaps he fell victim to his own dictum and ceased for a few fateful moments to think. Non cogito, non ergo sum. But this little instructive frivolity aside, the next step in Descartes' argument is yet more baneful. What assures him that this maxim is true, he tells us, is that, quote, I see very clearly that in order to think one must exist, quote, unquote. And so, quote, I judged that I could take as a general rule that the things we can see very clearly and very distinctively are all true, unquote. It looks as if Descartes has anticipated our objection here, for he now admits that, quote, in order to think one must exist, unquote. Well, we'll see in a bit if he's really conceded this point to common sense. But for now, we must note the egregious error he slipped in. Would it really be a good idea to accept as, quote, a general rule that the things we can see very, very clearly and very distinctively are all true, unquote? I remember about 10 years ago very clearly and very distinctively seeing a telltale mess of white paint all over my garbage can in the alley behind our house. And I very clearly and distinctly noticed that the peculiar lady next door, who regularly slipped things into our garbage can because she was too cheap to pay for her own trash service, was painting her kitchen white, because I very clearly and distinctly saw her carrying around a whitened paintbrush as she very clearly and distinctly told me she was painting her kitchen white. And I imagined myself very clearly and distinctly grabbing her by her tattered sweater and dragging her back to clean up the very clear and distinct mess all over the garbage can and surrounding pavement. Fortunately, while I was out back staring at the white paint and imagining even more vicious revenge, upon closer inspection I noticed that the white glop was white wallboard plaster, not white paint. The mess was actually made by the man redoing our bathroom. The lady next door was entirely innocent of that, at least. But this isn't just a moral lesson. Again, it regularly occurs in the history of science. We'll cite one interesting instance. A number of prominent scientists, beginning in 1877 with Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli, were convinced that they saw through their telescope an intricate system of canals on Mars. These canals were all very geometrical and hence obviously carried water for the great Martian civilization. The certainty of intelligent life on Mars was trumpeted with the aid of businessman and amateur astronomer Percival Lowell. Books were published. Major newspapers declared the evident certainty to the astounded and gullible public. Helping to whip the public into a frenzy was alien enthusiast H.G. Wells, whose War of the Worlds seared into people's minds the dire fate that awaited Earth once the Martians stopped boating around their canals and launched their inevitable attack. By 1930, the certainty was exploited by another astronomer, E.M. Antoniadi, who pointed out that the canals weren't canals. They were nice, geometrically drawn lines of precision traced on the surface of Mars. They weren't nice, geometrically drawn lines of precision traced on the surface of Mars, but just fuzzy shapes. The lesson is simple enough. Schiaparelli, Lowell, Wells, and a host of other scientists and popularizers wanted to see life on Mars. The alien enthusiasts just wanted to see what was fuzzy as straight and geometrical because they wanted Mars to be populated with aliens. It is often our desire to have something to be true that makes us clearly and distinctly see the false as true, the imagined as real. This is as true in the history of science as it is in our everyday life. In either case, reality is the appropriate test of our everyday beliefs and scientific theories. So I'm going to go ahead and halt it right there, but I think that you'll note in a lot of this that this dovetails very nicely with what I was talking about with regards to Rush Limbaugh and in my monologue. And so this will bring us to the conclusion of yet another episode of The Drill. And until next time, I thank you very much for listening and have a great day.